Have you ever wondered why certain paths in your life seem to repeat, even when everything in you longs for something new? Some decisions are not conscious choices. They emerge from a deeper place, where the echoes of unheard pain still whisper silent commands. The strangest part is that most of us don't notice, not because we are blind, but because we were taught to look in the wrong place. Carl Jung said that what we do not face in the unconscious reappears in our life as fate. And perhaps that's exactly what is happening to you right now. The choices that seem to be yours may never have been, in fact. Maybe they are being driven by a part of you that learned how to survive, but never learned how to be free. There is a pain, one you have probably ignored, not because it wasn't important, but because it was too much to deal with at the time, and it's still there, acting silently, shaping your relationships, your reactions, even your silence in situations that would demand a scream. But what if this pain, this trauma that was hidden deep in your unconscious, is the compass guiding all your decisions? What if it's dictating the emotional choices you believe you're making of your own free will? Today, we're going to dive into this abyss with you. Not to bring ready-made answers, but to reveal the hidden map that exists within you. Because understanding yourself is more than a choice. It's a calling. And maybe this is the moment when you finally answer that call. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. The reality as you perceive it is not a faithful mirror of the external world. It is in fact a reflection shaped by the invisible lenses of your unconscious. Like a silent projector, it chooses what you see, what you feel, and above all, what you ignore. Most people believe they are awake, making rational decisions. But are they really? Imagine being inside a room with fogged up windows. The light that comes in is distorted, the outlines of the world outside seem blurry. This is the mind when the unconscious remains in darkness, and everything that is not seen through this inner window shapes the walls of your outer reality. Since childhood, you have been accumulating experiences, sensations, traumas, all carefully stored in a place where reason cannot reach. They don't disappear. They simply move to a lower level and begin operating in the basement of your being. And there, where everything pulses in silence, these experiences begin to dictate your perception of what is possible, what is dangerous, what is love. Have you ever stopped to wonder why certain situations keep repeating in your life? Certain people, certain cycles, certain pains? It's not bad luck, it's a pattern, and patterns are the fingerprints of the unconscious. When you find a pattern that causes you suffering, it's a sign that there is an unresolved story trying to be heard again. But there is one detail that changes everything. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. Carl. Unhealed. Pain doesn't disappear. It adapts, and when it isn't embraced, it transforms into a silent compass that points to paths based on fear, protection, repetition. You may think you're avoiding pain, but in reality you are being guided by it. What few understand is that, by not healing old pain, we create future decisions that orbit around that wound. A heart that was betrayed learns to distrust before there's even a threat. A body that was rejected builds defences before any touch happens. The child who is ignored grows up choosing relationships where they will continue to be invisible. This is how trauma becomes destiny. And the compass, a labyrinth. And it doesn't matter how much you try to change the exterior, the job, the partner, the city. If your inner world is still vibrating in the frequency of pain, everything new will just be a disguised repetition. Inner healing is not a distant concept. It is a daily act of courage. It's opening the locked box where the past was hidden and allowing light to touch what has never been seen. This leads us to something even deeper. We are aware of our pain, but we do not know its origin, and so we confuse the wound with the world itself. Carl Jung. At some point in your life, something broke silently inside you. Maybe it was a word spoken with coldness, or the absence of a hug when you needed it most. These moments didn't disappear. They just hid. And the more we hide them, the more power they gain. Because pain doesn't go away when ignored. It just changes form and becomes direction. Have you ever felt like you're living on autopilot, always reacting the same way, even when you know it hurts you? That's the clearest sign that your inner compass is out of alignment. Unhealed pain seeps into your decisions, your affections, the words you speak, and the ones you swallow. Imagine being out at sea, sailing at night, guided by a compass that points toward the storm instead of towards solid ground. That's how life feels for those carrying open wounds in the unconscious. Pain starts to guide us, not like a wise master, but like an echo of what was never understood. And each choice, even the most logical ones, is just a disguised attempt to run from something that was never truly faced. And running away can take many forms. Sometimes it disguises itself as success, independence, even spirituality. But deep down, if you're using those achievements just to avoid feeling, then you're still trapped. What few realise is that pain longs to be understood. And until it is welcomed, it will keep disguising itself as choice, as intuition, even as love. There is a profound difference between choosing from the heart and deciding from a place of trauma. One is born from freedom, the other from the need to protect a wound. And that's why so many people follow paths that seem right, but eventually reveal themselves as golden cages. The unconscious crafts these routes perfectly. After all, it just wants to keep you safe, even if that means preventing you from becoming whole. But there's an even subtler and more unsettling truth. The more we deny our pain, the more silent and powerful it becomes. It's like an inverted magnetic compass, drawing in situations similar to the original wound, hoping, maybe this time, something will be different, that there will be healing, not just survival, and then it all makes sense. But are we ready to accept that? What we do not face in ourselves, we will meet as fate in others. Carl Jung. The repetitions in our lives are not coincidence. They are memories of the unconscious trying to find a new way to exist. Every relationship that ends the same way, every opportunity that slips through your fingers, every emptiness that keeps returning, are all signs of a cycle that hasn't yet completed within you. Trauma is not just what happened, but what we felt and couldn't name. It's the feeling of abandonment that stayed in the child's body when they cried and no one came. It's the confusion of being loved conditionally, of having to earn affection. These experiences create emotional patterns that repeat until we are able to look at them head on. Have you ever noticed how some people always attract the same type of partner? Or how some always self-sabotage at the very moment things start going well? That's not bad luck. It's an unconscious script being followed to the letter, a script written in silence, with invisible ink during the moments when pain was greater than understanding. And what's most surprising is that the unconscious is not trying to punish us. It's trying to heal us. It repeats the trauma not to hurt, but to offer a new chance for a different response. But without awareness, we respond the same way, repeating the pattern, reliving the pain, believing the world is cruel, that love doesn't exist, that happiness is an illusion. What few understand is that trauma creates repetition because it wants to be heard. It's like a child screaming without words. And until we listen to what's behind the scream, the pain, the fear, the desire to be seen. We will keep attracting similar stories, different characters with identical scripts. These repetitions are like broken mirrors. With each reflection, a part of our story is revealed, but never the whole. And maybe that's why we feel something is missing, even when everything seems to be in its place. Trauma creates gaps, and repetitions try to fill them, almost always without success. And just when we think we've already learned, there it is again. The same pain, wearing a new mask, more subtle, more sophisticated, but still familiar. Because trauma knows our paths better than we do. It lives between the lines of our thoughts, in the layers beneath our silences, and most of all, in our emotional choices. This brings us to something even deeper. A tree that grows in the dark bends toward a light it has never seen. Carl Jung. Everything that was repressed inside of us did not disappear. It simply waited for the right moment, for enough safety, for the necessary courage to finally be seen. And when we speak of inner healing, we don't mean erasing what was lived, but illuminating what was forgotten. Because the light of consciousness transforms, not by eliminating the shadow, but by revealing that it too has something to say. There is a place within you where you stored parts of yourself you didn't know how to deal with. Maybe the anger you felt but learned to hide. Maybe the deep sadness no one allowed you to express. Maybe even the love you felt for someone who could never return it. All of that is still there. And as long as it remains hidden, it will continue to govern your life from behind the veil. Bringing light is not just an act of courage, it's a pact with the truth. And truth doesn't mean eternal pain, but freedom. The freedom to look within and realise there's nothing inside you that needs to be feared. Only parts of yourself that were forgotten, abandoned, silenced. And when we start listening to them, something changes. Consciousness does not judge, it welcomes. And when you illuminate the dark spaces of the unconscious, you begin to realise that much of what was guiding you wasn't choice. It was survival. And what once seemed like inevitable destiny reveals itself as an unfinished story. A story that can still be rewritten. What few realise is that the unconscious is like an old house. The longer it's left in the dark, the more it scares you. But just light a single lamp, even a small one, and you begin to see that the monsters were actually just furniture, covered in sheets. Nothing in there wants to destroy you. Everything in there wants to be integrated. When the light of attention touches an old pain, it doesn't scream. It sighs. It dissolves into fragments and begins to tell its story in a different way. And in that act of inner listening, you begin to realise that all the things you thought were weaknesses were just parts of you waiting to be cared for. In the end, bringing light isn't about solving everything. It's about being present with what hurts. It's about looking inward with the same compassion we would offer a wounded child. Because that's exactly what we are, in many moments. Children growing up with unhealed trauma, trying to survive in a world that demands maturity. And when that light begins to touch those forgotten parts, something new becomes possible. This leads us to something even more essential. Where fear rules, there the soul is a prisoner. Carl Jung. How many of your choices have truly been free? And how many were born from the need to avoid an old pain, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being loved? These fears shape decisions like invisible hands, making you believe you are in control, when in reality, you're only protecting yourself. True choice is born from silence, not the kind of silence that suffocates, but the silence that listens. That moment when you ask yourself, Am I doing this because I truly want to, or because I'm afraid? The answer doesn't come from the mind. It resonates in the body, pulses in the heart. And it is there, in that space between feeling and deciding, that freedom begins. To choose with awareness is a radical act of presence. It means having the courage to stay where it hurts for just a little longer. It means not running from the discomfort that points you toward what still needs to be seen. Because fear always offers shortcuts, but consciousness offers a path, and a path requires one step at a time, even if it's unsteady. Have you noticed how subtle fear is? It disguises itself as logic, as caution, even as love. How many times have you said, "It's not the right time," when in truth you meant, "I'm scared"? How many times have you chosen the safety of a lukewarm relationship instead of risking opening up to something real? Unhealed trauma creates voices that mimic your reason, but they're only echoes of what still frightens you. What few understand is that living consciously doesn't mean living without fear. It means making choices despite fear. It means recognizing its presence without letting it take the wheel. Fear may be in the car, but it no longer gets to drive. And that changes everything. Because for the first time, your decisions truly become yours, and not those of the wounded child who learned to survive instead of live. Inner healing does not mean perfection. It means presence. It means, perhaps for the first time, listening to yourself with honesty, looking at your life and noticing where fear is still in control, where it still says don't go when your heart is whispering yes. And in making that distinction, you reclaim something you were never meant to lose, the right to choose with awareness. And then when choices no longer come from the wound, but from the essence, everything changes. You don't just change direction, you change the way you walk. And that inner shift transforms reality. And now, what does this mean for you? Maybe the answer was inside you all along. All our lives we believe we're in charge, that we are the authors of our decisions, the architects of our journey. But the truth is, many times, we're merely responding to traumas we didn't understand, to pains we've hidden, to voices we inherited. The unconscious is a master at creating realities that seem like they're ours, but were built to protect our wounds. That's why even when new opportunities arise, we still choose the same paths. That's why even in different relationships we relive the same abandonments, because what is not healed repeats itself, and it disguises itself as logic, as fate, even as intuition. But when consciousness touches the wound, not to judge it, but to listen to it, something extraordinary happens. Pain stops being the enemy and becomes an ally, and what once guided your choices through fear begins to dissolve. You no longer need to run or to repeat. You can finally choose. And then it all makes sense. You were never trapped in the world. You were trapped in a part of yourself that wasn't seen. You weren't failing. You were trying to survive with the tools you had. And now with this light, you can create something new. But are we ready to accept that? To accept that part of what we called life was, in fact, just a reflection of the pain we didn't dare to face? If so, then the true path begins now. Not the one drawn by trauma, but the one born from presence, from truth, from inner freedom. The pain you ignored was never your enemy. It was just a part of you, asking for attention. For years it guided you down paths that made no sense, that felt like punishment. but were merely imperfect attempts to protect you. Now, with awareness, you have a new choice: to keep repeating or to begin rewriting. It's not easy, no healing journey is, but it's not impossible either. When you realize that your emotional choices can be reconnected to the truth of your being, and not to the trauma of your past, something inside you awakens. It's as if, for the first time, the steering wheel of your life is back in your hands. Carl Jung showed us that making the unconscious conscious is the path to freedom. And now you no longer have to lose yourself in the silent repetitions that once ruled your days. You can look at your pain with a compassion. And more importantly, you can choose with clarity. You can love with presence. You can live with truth. If this content brought valuable insights to you, don't let the learning stop here. Start putting these ideas into practice and see how your perception of life begins to shift. Now tell me in the comments, which of these reflections resonated with you the most? Or, if you've experienced something similar, share your story. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. And if you'd like to dive even deeper into this topic, I'll leave another video up here that can add even more value to your journey. See you in the next video.